A helicopter crash on November 1st of this year claimed the life of a couple and their toddler in an R-44 in Louisiana near Lake Charles. I don't have any words for it. So the NTSB preliminary report for the November 1st crash just came out, and it confirmed some things that were suspected in the media, and I wanted to wait until the NTSB report came out, or the preliminary, just to confirm it. But as you'll see, there's no excuse. A lot of mishaps we talk about, and I've talked about, I always say, there by the grace of God go I. And, it could happen to anybody. The Swiss cheese lines up, and sometimes bad things happen to good pilots. This is not one of those cases. This is a pretty inexcusable mishap, and I'll talk about why here in a second while we go over it, but just awful. Preliminary report on November 1st, 2024, about 21:06 Central Daylight Time. So dark, nighttime, 9 o'clock. A Robinson R-44 Raven 2 helicopter, November 6-2 Charlie Delta, was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Iowa, Louisiana. The pilot and 2 passengers were fatally injured, and the passenger being his wife and toddler. The helicopter was operated as a Title 14 CFR Part 91 personal flight, so not commercial use or anything like that. Position data indicated that the pilot initially departed from private property near Kinder, Louisiana at about 6:13 p.m. He proceeded southeast and climbed to an altitude of about 800 feet MSL. At 6:26, he landed in a field near a restaurant about 1.2 miles west of Chenault International Airport in Lake Charles. So basically, it's the $100 hamburger, or in this case, $500 hamburger. He's like, I'm going to take my family to a nice dinner at this restaurant. I've wanted to do it in R-44. There was a restaurant on the west side of Lake Pontchartrain that I've always wanted to go to, but they sold the helicopter. And when I first got checked out, it was closed due to a hurricane. So that's a common thing. Helicopter pilots, hey, we can land anywhere. We're going to go to this restaurant. So he takes his family to this restaurant, and at 8:54, departs from the field, proceeds northeast on a reciprocal course from the preceding flight because he's going home. Helicopter reached an altitude of about 1,300 feet. At 9:01, the helicopter entered a left turn momentarily to a westerly course, then to a northwesterly course. So hard left, then kind of takes that out. 90 seconds after that turn, entered a right turn to a northeasterly course. So now we've gone almost 180 degrees. And then to an easterly course. The altitude remained approximately 1,300 feet until the helicopter began the easterly turn. So now they're due east. After the helicopter became established on an easterly course, the altitude decreased to about 1,000 feet, 1,050, and then increased abruptly to 1,500 feet. So that's a huge climb. About 21:04, the helicopter entered a right turn to a southerly course. Then about 38 seconds later, so it's continuing. It's like, okay, we've gone left and then full all the way around like a 270. The helicopter entered a gradual descending left turn. After completing a 270 heading change to a southwesterly course, the helicopter entered an abrupt 270 right turn to a southeasterly course. The helicopter completed 2 additional and irregular 360 right-hand turns before the final data point. The altitude continued to decrease during this time. Final data point was recorded at 9:06 p.m. So 5 minutes of this, essentially, at 85 feet north of the accident site at approximately 200 feet. That's the last data point. So you can see the final track here. They take off from the restaurant. That's I-10. That's Iowa. Don't know really where they're going. And then I don't know why they say it was Iowa, because this is up in Hecker. But that's where they wound up. And if they look at the track, 6-2 Charlie Delta, they go this extreme nose high and then pitch over, and then it's just this turn. Helicopter impacted a 2-lane asphalt road bordered by 40 to 50 foot tall trees on both sides. Set of power lines about 50 feet or 30 feet high ran along the west side of the road. An additional set of power lines crossed perpendicular. The lines were intact except for a single strand which dropped about 2 feet. No evidence of a power line strike was observed. That is the crash site. Is awful. The helicopter came to a rest on a road oriented on a southwest heading. Fuselage was consumed by post-impact fire. Small debris unaffected by the fire extended about 25 feet. Landing skids were fragmented, with one section located about 220 feet from the main wreckage. The main rotor blades remained attached to the hub. One blade was fragmented, with the blade tip located in the wooded area about 200 feet south. The other blade was deformed but remained continuous from blade root to tip. The tail boom was resting in a position relative to the fuselage. Forward portion of the tail boom exhibited impact and thermal damage. The remaining portion was intact. The tail rotor blades were intact. The tail rotor transmission rotated smoothly with corresponding rotation, so it wasn't like a tail rotor failure or anything that they can tell. An initial review by the FAA revealed the pilot held a student pilot certificate. There was no record of the pilot being issued a medical certificate or of having obtained a medical certification under Basic Med. Preliminary review of the pilot's logbook revealed that he had logged about 139 hours total time, all of which were in R-44 helicopters. Of that flight time, about 15 hours were at night. On the day of the accident, sunset was at 6:23 and civil twilight ended at 6:49. We'll get to this. So here's the information of the helicopter. It was scattered at 4,700, nighttime, dark. I think it might have been raining in some areas as well. But there you go. 3 fatal injuries. They were going to Kinder. It's unacceptable. If you go and look at this person's social media, this is an extreme normalization of deviance. First, I will say it's very sad for the family. I feel for the family that lost a loved one because they don't know any better. I feel for the wife and her family having lost someone. They lost a daughter and a granddaughter. The toddler, this is awful. And the friends and everybody who lost somebody, obviously, I feel for them. For the pilot, this is almost murder. It's a murder-suicide. He soloed and then said, you know what? It's good enough. No medical, which you're not supposed to solo without a medical, by the way, because that is your solo, like your student pilot. So we were already illegal, like way back here. But to solo a helicopter you bought is one thing, with no license. That's fine. But you introduce other people, regardless if it's your wife, especially if it's your wife and daughter, especially with the amount of hubris it takes to think that you don't need that training, to think that you don't need that certification, to think that you don't need that medical. It's unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And the reason I wore the Heli Expo shirt today is because we talk about that safety at the safety symposium. We've talked about 56 seconds to live. It has killed experienced pilots. People with thousands of hours go out there and get spatially disoriented either at night or in the weather. And we talk about that and how to transition instruments and how to land and live. But a student pilot taking passengers at night with no certifications? You killed a toddler, man. I don't care if, it's possible that something mechanical happened that caused this. But the pilot was ill-equipped to handle it. Doesn't matter. There's a reason we have the certifications in place that we do. And you're not above it. You needed to go and get the qualifications and finish the training. I don't care how many hours you had. You've got to finish the training. You've got to get because if we're going to skip out on licensing, are we going to skip out on airworthiness on the helicopter? How is it even insured? Who's insuring a student pilot for taking passengers? Nobody. And if you go to this person's social media, which is still public, you can find people talking about, well, when you got your solo certification, thanks for taking me for a ride. So this started way back earlier this year when the person got their license, and then was taking passengers to go look at the building being destroyed in Lake Charles that they did a controlled demolition, doing commercial photography for that. Again, you're not taking passengers legally as a student pilot. That's why you're a student. You're still learning. I've seen a lot of mishap reports, and I don't know why this infuriates me so much, but I guess it's because that little girl. the little toddler who didn't know any better, who didn't have a say, didn't have a choice, that this person was so arrogant that believed that the law and it did not apply to them. And so when you get to the root cause of the mishap, yeah, it could be spatial disorientation. Hell, it could be mass bumping. It could be a plethora of things that the NTSB is going to look through and figure out. But the root cause is this person's lack of respect for aviation, lack of respect for the system that's in place, and intentional noncompliance. That's what this is. It's intentional noncompliance. Doesn't matter what happened. It's more than likely spatial disorientation, just based on the extreme pitch up. We saw this with very experienced helicopter pilots in Baton Rouge, flying law enforcement missions. We've seen this before. It's not a Robinson thing. People will jump and say, "Well, Robinson's unsafe." Well, yeah, it's unsafe when you've got people that aren't qualified to fly it. Now, remember, also, not only did he not have a license, but SFAR 73 also applies for an R-44, which means there are even more stringent requirements to taking passengers and flying. And you have to have night currency. And he had 15 hours at night. I'm sorry for the family. I'm sorry for the family. I'm sorry for their friends. They don't know any better. I'm sure they will be the first ones to defend it, but there is no defense of it. There is no defense of what happened that caused this mishap. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys know something I don't. But land and live, man. There's training. That's why we do training, right? We don't just throw people in situations. It's not a car. You can't just pull over on the side of the road and figure it out. You have to know emergency procedures. You have to know how to deal with that. Spatial disorientation is scary. I've had it happen as a professional pilot. It takes all of your skill, knowledge, and ability to get yourself out of it. And that's why we train. That's why we train a lot. And didn't have it. He ran out of luck. It was lucky to that point that nothing had happened. Anyway, I guess thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.